Okay. Minimize this. There, can everyone see the first slide?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
All right, great. So as I was getting ready to put together this presentation, I ran across this quote, and I think it's from the Encyclopedia Britannica. And somewhere in the basement at home, I have a complete set, but I found this online. Purpose of an observatory is to gather information to understand nature of the universe and its various components. That's a pretty heavy statement, and it goes well beyond taking pretty pictures, but it is taking pretty pictures as well, because it is understanding where we are in the universe, and whatever we do, however we do it, just adds to our own personal knowledge and the knowledge of our friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
So just like real estate, if you're thinking about where you're going to observe from, it's location, location, location. You want to find a spot which the skies can be as dark as possible. And as we're going to talk about, it's going to vary for everyone's personal situation. And you read about folks that are imaging from New York City or London. It's possible to image and observe from almost every place. Maybe not observe from London or New York City, but imaging is possible. Not ideal, but it's always a matter of trade-offs. And we'll talk about some of those trade-offs. But throughout all of this, keep in mind that only you can decide what's best for you. You'll hear a lot of opinions. We all have opinions as what you should do or could do or might do, but take it all in and figure out what works best in your situation. So just some options, and there's probably more than what I've listed here, but we have members who will roll out 3 different sets of gear, sometimes 4 telescopes on 3 sets of rolling tripods. Some folks will have a fixed pier in their backyard, and they're able to come out and put the mount and telescope onto that. Folks will leave those sometimes set up for periods of time, put a tent or a telegizmo, which is a covering designed for different sizes of telescopes. Home observatory buildings. People will get domes, and there's pre-built ones. There's customized ones. I have a neighbor down here in New Mexico who built his dome himself. In fact, there's several domes down here built by their owners. But this guy built his dome, got a divorce, lost the dome, found the dome, just bought it, and is bringing it back and setting it up. And that's all over about a 5-year period. So a lot of possibilities with domes. Roll-off roofs. There's been some discussion on our Slack group about roll-off roofs and people that are having them and planning on building them. Rolling sheds. I've seen designs where people will put a permanent pier and a pad in the backyard, and then get a tool shed from Menards or Home Depot or someone like that, and are able to manually roll it over and cover the telescope and mount, and then pull it back off. Certainly our club observatory is there and is available to all the members. A couple of weeks ago, I got a chance, along with some other astronomers here in our neighborhood, to go over to one of the remote sites here in New Mexico, where they have, I think, about 60 telescopes owned by people. I think they said 3 continents, 12 countries, I don't know how many states. And some very, very interesting setups, but people are able to put their telescope in a dark site, have someone look after it, and do their imaging sessions from, New Jersey or Wisconsin or so forth. I believe, I can't remember his name. There was a Wisconsin club member that was there. I think he's moved his gear down to Chile now. So lot of possibilities for remote sites. I know there's at least 3 or 4 here in New Mexico. Driving to a dark site, we just referenced earlier that some of our club members tonight and tomorrow night are heading off to, I believe, state parks in Wisconsin to observe. Star parties. We haven't had very many of them during COVID, but they're starting back up again, and typically those are at nice dark sites, and they offer the opportunity to see other people set up, learn from others in a very concentrated way. And then I think it was, Dennis, maybe 2 years ago, you did some presentations on SLU, and I believe Williams school, high school uses SLU for time sharing. So there's lots of different options for observing. So some just quick comments on observing sites. I guess the first is, how can you get to it? Is it in your backyard? Do you have to worry about tripping, getting back there? Do you have some property out in the country, a vacant lot that you have access to? What's the sky conditions? Is it darker in one part of your yard than another? And the equipment, how are you going to get it there? How are you going to get the power there? How are you going to control the equipment? Light pollution, we're always fighting light pollution. And is there a site that gives you darker skies? If you're setting up and taking down every night, how easy is it to do it? I mean, do you have the ability to roll your gear out and set it in your yard, on a patio, on a driveway? And how long does it take to get it aligned and running? And then at the end of the night, packing it up. Security and safety. One of the things that I had to think about when I had my setup in my driveway was, what if I lifted up, went to bed, and the UPS truck comes roaring up my hill, and there's my telescope in the middle of the driveway. So I wound up putting out orange cones all around it. But there's certainly a whole lot of other security and safety issues that you have to be concerned about. Neighbors, HOAs, and zoning. Lions and tigers and bears. Do your neighbors approve of you going bump in the night in their back, what they believe is their backyard? Do HOAs have any restrictions against having an observatory building? And zoning, do you have to get approval? Those are all things that are going to vary by each and every location. Can you take your observatory with you if you move your residence? I mean, even if it's, a pier, do you have to, demolish it? Can you leave it there and pretend that it's a bird bath? How easy is it to dismantle? I see ads all the time that you can have this observatory if you come and dismantle it. Budget, I probably should have said budget, just like location. We always have to be mindful of our budget. What are we going to spend to make our observing experience better? And then as you put it together, what sort of future proofing or future plans that you might have. If you think you might be moving in a few years, you may not want to have a, as they say, brick and mortar kind of a setup. So, you know, most of you are sitting in Wisconsin. Climate is a big issue. Do you have to shovel snow to get to your observatory? Or even if it's a pad, to clear the pad in order to get to it. If it is going to be a building, do you need or want creature comforts? Are you going to have a warm room? What type of telescope are you going to have? Or types? Do you want to have more than one that might change your view as to whether you have a roll-off roof where you can have maybe a couple or three observing piers to work from? The types of observing. There's kind of a statement that if you're doing visual roll-off roof is fine, but if you're doing imaging, you should have a dome. Those are probably the least important of the considerations. It's more important to find a place where you can observe and what works best for you and your budget. And finally, in this group, automation. Do you want to be able to control it from your house? Do you need to be pier side? You know, there's another saying, you can never be, you know, too rich or too thin or have too much automation. We'll see how that pans out. Observing quality factors, space. Do you need room to move around inside an observatory that you have? Or is there just room for the telescope and is that fine? Have you placed it where there's a good sky view, that you don't have a tree right nearby that's going to block your view of the sky? Thermal considerations, a lot written about this as to, you know, viewing over roofs, building an observatory too close to a house, concrete will give off thermals, so will blacktop. There's a lot of stuff to think about, but it's looking at all these various factors and trying to optimize. There is no single best solution. And versatility. You know, you have to look towards the future. If you're going to be selling your place, can your roll-off roof be turned into a tool shed? Or is it something which, if it's a dome, probably hard to call that a tool shed if you're trying to sell your property. So just you know, being concerned about the future of your observatory. What we won't focus on tonight, and it might be something for a future program, are piers. We could talk all night about all the different considerations that go into what you put your mount on. And as you can see here, whether it's tripods or, you know, concrete, either at the base or all the way up to the mount, concrete block, steel, power considerations, lightning and surge protection. And by the way, that is something which a bunch of my neighbors came back this past fall, only to find that computers had blown up, not literally blown up, but had been fried by lightning storms over the past summer. So understanding lightning and surge protection is again, it could be a whole topic by itself. How are you going to connect your mount and cameras to your computer? And security. You know, maybe you just throw a blanket over it in your backyard, and that's good enough. whether you have cameras, and again, a whole lot of other issues. So that's kind of the setup for the discussion. And let me end the sharing. And who wants to be first to talk about their setup? I mean, you can see my dome behind me. That's my setup. Big concrete dome.
Plus you have a roll off, plus you have two other observatory pads.
Yeah. So one of the considerations that I didn't list when we were talking about where to observe is, you can buy a house that has an observatory, which is what I did. Right next door to me, and out here next door is 10 miles away, is the Arizona Sky Village. There's 30 some odd houses there, all with at least one observatory, be it roll off or dome. And there's turnover there. There's still some lots available, but I'd say 1 or 2 houses every couple of years come up for sale, and people sell out and other people move in. And there's these, and this is a good HOA. They don't allow people to have outside lights or even to leave their curtains open at night. So there's a number of these sky villages types, around the country that people can look at. It all depends, again, on what you want to do with this hobby, this avocation that we call astronomy, astrophotography.
Yeah, but I got a question for you. I've been out in your area, and you're right. It looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, which is great for the skies. Are you talking about the town of Portal, where that community is at?
Right. So Portal is 10 miles to the west of my place.
Okay. So what do those folks do for internet access? Do they, is there providers out there, or?
They have providers. I don't. They do. They got, when they developed this, they got fiber put in.
Really?
Yeah. So the main highway, which I'm about a mile away from, has a major fiber trunk running down it. And they were able to tap into that and have that. The Dark Sky, New Mexico, which is the shared facility that I referenced, which is about 7 miles northeast of my place, they also have fiber. They have 1 gigabyte, 1 gigabyte in and out to host. But where I am, I have the evil Starlink.
Yeah.
And that's and people that didn't have Starlink, before Starlink, if you weren't lucky enough to be in one of those places, it was tough. Maybe you had a phone modem or something like that.
No, okay. Wow. So that highway you're talking about, that's the highway off of 10 heading down to your place?
Right. Highway 80, which goes
80, yeah.
south. Yeah.
Okay, so they have fiber running along that highway.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And AT&T fiber, and that's our cell service. And I have a cell tower, again, about a mile away straight.
Okay. But the fiber doesn't run all the way down to your place?
Nope.
No.
and my local rural co-op telephone company says, we'll be there someday.
Yeah. Okay.
Someday is, I think, extends beyond my life expectancy. So.
Right. Okay. Well, as long as you're controlling your observatories from inside your office or your house, I mean, I was thinking that if anybody wanted to, have remote telescopes down by, your area, then, having a good internet connection. So the folks in Portal have got that locked up, so they can actually go back to the Midwest and still access their observatories for those who are just down there for the winter.
Right, and I would say 80% of them are only here for the winter.
Yeah, wow.
We're
Okay.
90%. I mean, there's only I think 3 or 4 permanent residents, and everyone else goes back to, a whole bunch of them go back to Canada. I'd say probably a third of them go to Canada, and a few in California and so forth. But there's more and more. We kind of counted it up the other day, and there is about 150 observing sites here in this valley, the San Simon Valley. So, dark skies are a blessing here. Remoteness is a bit of a curse, and you have remoteness if you're driving to a dark site in Wisconsin. You have to pack up, you have to drive out there, spend the night, drive back. This is a hobby which requires much of us, and that's why I think many have decided to have an observatory or an observing site in their backyard. And I see Gabe is here. I'm wondering, Gabe, if you could just talk about just a couple minutes how you roll out your telescopes and get set up for the night, and then roll them back in the morning, because I think many of us have started that way, and I think you have it down to a fine art.
Yeah, whenever I set up, I have 2 scopes on 2 scope buggies, and I roll it out and then anchor the feet. So I put blocks of wood under the feet on the scope buggies to keep them secure so they don't roll around. That also prevents sort of vibration, a little bit more vibration whenever the wind picks up, to keep the whole thing from moving a bit. So I initially was worried that would, I would still see the effect of that in my images, but I haven't had any noticeable, any data. I haven't seen any data that shows that is a problem. And then I have 2 astrophysics mounts. So with both of them, I have a Rapis, which allows me to polar align in a couple minutes. And it's good enough to get me zeroed in so that I don't have any trailing or anything like that over very long subs, like 15-30 minute subs. There's no trailing or anything. I've been recently exploring something like a pointing model and putting that in every night, but honestly, I haven't imaged in a while, probably since December. So that was the last time I was out imaging, and I was doing pointing models and so on when I had the time, as twilight was coming. But yeah, it's pretty quick to deploy. It's probably the next best thing to an observatory, a dedicated observatory. On your slides, you had a mention of HOA rules, and that's exactly why I don't have an observatory, is because there are HOA rules. And I've heard that you could probably like push the boundaries on that and still get it done, but I just don't want to risk it. So yeah, that's kind of the story with my setup. Pretty quick deployment, and have it all automated with Voyager. And in the morning, when it starts to get dawn, I have an alarm to get me out there and roll it back in before it gets too bright out.
So Gabe, as you know, we're putting together an observatory for Carroll University, and we're gonna start with the with the Scope Caddy, in the, we're going to store the scope and the caddy in the nature center. So while the observatory is being built, I'm gonna be learning the rollout technique that you guys use. And do you mark on your driveway where the 3 legs are of your caddy?
No, and I have this really unfortunate situation where the house is to the south of the location, so
Okay.
everything like to declination 0 and below is eclipsed by the house. So if I really want to image something like Orion Nebula, which is like -5, or maybe like the Seagull Nebula, I have to pull it out even farther away from the house. So my location on the driveway varies night to night.
Oh, okay. Ouch.
And honestly, with the RAPAS, it doesn't really matter because you can do it so quickly. You can
Okay.
put it in almost any place on the driveway or in the yard, really. And you can still dial it in very well because it's it's calibrated. I calibrated it with drift alignment, with polar alignment through, drift align method with, through like PhD or something. And it works really well. I haven't really seen a need to change that up. I also have another mount, the Rainbow Astro 135, and that has a, what do they call it? The pole master on top of it.
Ah, okay.
And that's another way to get a really good polar alignment when you're mobile, like
Yeah.
how you would do it with the buggy. But the reason I don't like that as much as the RAPAS is that you have to use a phone or use a computer connected to the RAPAS, or sorry, to the pole master to interact with it and see where the Polaris is compared to where it should be, and then do your change that way.
Right. Okay.
Well, it's low tech, which ordinarily I like tech, but it's low tech enough that you can do it without having to fumble out with your phone or anything like that.
Yeah, Dennis, I do the same thing. I mean, I'm on a gravel driveway.
Okay.
Oh, I wheel mine out. Fortunately, my 3-car garage runs east-west. So I try to roll out of the garage as perpendicular to my garage as possible.
Okay.
I use, and I just eyeball it, I level it. And exactly what Gabe is talking about, I've lived both worlds. I've got the Mach 2, which I have a RAPAS for, which, like Gabe is suggesting, is the cat's meow, because it takes literally, I don't know, less than a minute to polar align. And then I also live what he was suggesting too on the AP 900 or my CGEM mount. I've got to use the pole master, so that takes 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how ready you are, because you do have to fire up a laptop. But even still, with rolling it out, I mean, if I decided right now to go set up, and it was dark enough that I could polar align, I could be ready in 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So for us non-AP people, what is a RAPAS?
A right angle polar alignment scope. It's really nice because it allows you to not get under your mount and kind of crank your neck. I used to have an old Atlas EQG from Orion, and that had a polar scope that was built into the mount, which was great, but you always had to get sort of under the mount and put your eyeball up next to this thing. Crank your neck all the time, it's a pain. Then the polar scope, the reticle wasn't that great. But with the RAPAS, it's right angle, so really you're just kind of looking down into the scope. And the reticle is pretty high resolution. It's really nice.
Okay. So it's permanently mounted on your mount.
It can be model. Yeah, it can be, but you can detach it. Like if you're mobile, if you want to go to a dark side or something like that, you can detach it, and then when you reattach it, the machining is really well, it's really precise, so that when you put it back in, you have pretty good certainty that you're going to align well with Polaris.
Well, we did buy a pole master, so it's still, all the stuff is still in the box. We're having a little scheduling time difficulty with Tate, Dr. Wilson, who's in charge of the program. They had a faculty member leave, and now he's doubling up on lectures. And so, he's just, so the tripod and the mount, and we got the scope is in my kitchen. I mean, so we got all the pieces and parts scattered around, and but we're hoping to find some time over the next couple weeks to start pulling this all together. But on the short term, before we can get any additional funds, we need to get this whole thing set up on a scope caddy and start getting some images for our investors to put in some additional funding. So they want to see some results, and I don't blame them. So
Dennis, Gabe is probably closer to you, but you're certainly welcome to stop out one night to see me actually do that.
Sure, yeah, that would certainly be helpful. I don't know where we're going to be storing everything, and there's this huge center, nature center, where there's classrooms and big rollout patios, and so we don't know exactly what we're going to be allocated yet, but clearly we're going to be a caddy bound for probably the rest of this year.
So Dennis, back to your original question about, if you were putting it on a driveway, which mine is on a driveway, I don't have a caddy. So it's like I'm hauling the tripod out, carrying it out every night. So I do have marks for the 3 legs of the tripod, for the outside arc of the tripod. And that gets me pretty close. And then I still use my pole master. I have to tweak just a bit, right?
Okay.
To get it lined up, but it's probably about 20 minutes to put the whole thing in place, and about another 5 minutes for the pole master, and then the same effort to tear it down. I would like the idea of a caddy, but like I said, it always goes in the very same spot on my driveway. I've figured out what's the best, gives me the best view of the sky. And I got a number of obstacles to 360 degrees, right? But making sure I've got a good view of Polaris is one of the main ones, just for the polar alignment. And so it works pretty well that if you've got marks, that you can just set your tripod on those marks. And like I said, you still need to polar align, but it's going to be pretty close.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll have to see if we're given some designated spot that we'll be rolling the caddy out to, to the exact same spot, where we don't have to kind of optimize. There's 60 acres out there, but we certainly don't want to have to roll too far from the main building where we're going to be, keeping the equipment. So, all right, that's helpful. So, Steve, you use also a pole master, don't you?
Okay, I'm here. I use the pole master. I have a Rapaz, and I had some difficulties. Well, I don't know. My issues were cables and running through the center of the scope, and oddly, I used to snag my clothing on the device itself, but it's I switched to the pole master, and I only pull her a line once in a while, so it works well for me. But the pole master seems to be dead on. I'm really happy with the results, but it does take a little bit longer, I admit. As far as the scope and my stuff has always been kind of like with the idea in mind that we might be relocating, soon, and which hasn't turned out to be the case, but so things are somewhat temporary. Dennis, I think you saw my vinyl dome, and that was slick. That worked really well. The thing spun around, but the trouble is it wasn't motorized, so I had to run outside and turn it every half hour or so. The neatest thing I had was that garden storage I guess it's not really a shed, it's smaller than a shed, but the top would flip up and the one side, the doors would open. And I had a Eagle tripod with a Mach 1 mount and my TAC 106 in there, and it fit just perfectly. I have that up in Wisconsin, and down here in New Mexico, I did the same thing. And fortunately, just after I had packed the scope up to come back to Wisconsin, a dust devil came through. And I don't know, Kevin, you have any issues with wind? I'm sure you might. And it literally ripped the shed apart. This
Oh
thing,
my gosh.
yeah, just dust devil. I never even knew it was here. I was sitting out in the front with my wife and just enjoying the beautiful day, and go out and back and saw what had happened. But they're interesting, dust devils, and they're fun to watch from a distance. Right now I just have my 1100 mount on a tripod, and I cover it, and it's secured down on patio blocks, and the problem is we've had some nasty winds this winter. And I think I recorded sustained winds of 59 miles an hour and 60 some mile an hour gusts. And the result is that my tripod vibrated a little bit, just enough to have to do a realignment. And then again, it happened maybe just within the month or so ago, and the other night I went out to image and the alignment was way off, so I had to realign with the pole master. But yeah, it's interesting out here. It's remote. Internet's a problem, but we use satellite internet access, and that's been fairly good. I don't know.
So Steve, you said a dust devil destroyed your shed?
Yeah, it was actually staked down with 4 5/8 inch, 2 foot long stakes that went through the floor into the ground. And they were pulled up. Maybe the stakes were maybe 2-3 inches, but the trouble is the rest of the shed, it just ripped it apart.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, how about the equipment inside?
No, I had just packed the scope up to come.
Oh,
Fortunately, yeah, the timing was great. I mean, it happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I picked up the pieces. I'm sure it could be reassembled and silicone back together, but,
Oh gosh.
um,
So when are you heading back to Wisconsin?
we're going to leave middle of May. I don't know, Kevin, what are your plans? About the same or a little earlier? Your mic.
You're muted, Kevin.
We'll be heading back the 1st of May, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to get back before Memorial Day so that, people start going on vacation, roads get busy and all that. And it's just a good time.
So I'm going to miss you guys. I got to get this damn cataract surgery done at the end of April.
Yeah.
And I won't get new glasses and released with a new prescription until the end of May. So it's a whole month, and then I got to order new glasses. So it's going to be the middle of June, and that may just be a little bit too late to head off to Arizona.
Yeah, it'll be toasty down here.
Yeah, it'll be toasted. Yeah. So
with Steve's discussion, we touched on a couple of others. We talked, he has the garden tool shed kind of thing, and I guess it's not tornado or dust devil proof, but it seems to have worked well. you mentioned domes, and it sounds like you have one that was similar to Dennis's, and where it would open up halfway, or you could turn it a slot. Maybe you and Dennis can talk just a little bit about these manufactured domes.
It was totally different. This guy used to sell these at star show, star parties and things. And I forgot his name, but it was actually a PVC frame. Big, I think it was maybe 10 feet. And over the frame was vinyl fabric cover that was designed to fit in, and it attached to the PVC, and it was a slick deal. I think I paid $1,000 for it. Of course, this was 10 years ago or so, and maybe longer. Time flies. But God, I had that thing set up. It was really nice inside, and it held up through the winters and storms. And but the guy passed away, and I actually have the thing sitting in my garage, all folded up and stored. Came in a nice canvas bag, and easy to transport. It was meant to be portable. I should do something with that, but yeah, it worked out well. But it wasn't motorized, as I say, and it's you really do need to get out every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and rotate the slit. But another thing I've done is I made a garden shed, just a standard garden shed out of plastic, or it's a resin product, like I call it plastic, and I made it so that it actually rolls away from the scope. So the scope is sitting on a permanent mount, and the shed rolls on a track off to the side. And that's been actually it's worked out fairly well. And it's, again, it's a $1,000 shed, pair of doors. It's beautiful. It's got windows. It doesn't leak. It's proven. It's got floor. I cut the floor out so that you could slide the scope. It would slide over the scope and or the tripod, around the tripod, and it's proven to be a nifty little idea. So I don't know, there's a lot of options. It's funny when you get creative and you start thinking. And the idea then was, with this rollaway shed, was that I wouldn't have the ugly track, the overhead track that extend from the building. Footings weren't required out at the end of it, and it's just a matter of a U-channel. You can use anything, and it just rolls on that. I push it off and I push it back in. That's it. So it's worked out really well. No maintenance, and as I said, it's watertight. That's my story.
Yeah, well, I initially went with the SkyPod, and so that's not really a traditional dome system with a slit. The SkyShed now does in fact make a slit version, of it that's actually pretty nice. But this design is kind of a half shell. I mean, you have 180 degrees field of view, and so you have less, like, Steve had a slit on that canvas, the fabric dome. so yeah, you have less time that you have to rotate it, because you kind of can at least optimize it, but I still had problems with the scope going into the zenith. And even though you offset your pier a little bit to the south, so it was 90% of the time it worked really well, but it was that 10% that was enough annoying that this scope would kind of so when the best viewing, when the objects were in the zenith, I had to bail out. I couldn't. The scope would go inside the dome. So so now I have essentially a roll-off system now. I mean, I roll off the entire dome, and so I'm pretty sure some of you have seen the videos, but so now it's just like what Jeff is building, and the roll-off roofs that we have at the observatory. This just looks weird because it's a dome that's rolling off. So I open it so that it becomes a half dome, and then that half rolls back on V wheels on tracks. And but then that allowed me to do automation, and so now the dome opens by itself and then rolls back, and so I was able to fully automate it. It was a lot of work. I think if I had to do it again, I thought I would be just fine with that half shell approach, but that 10% of the time where I'd get obstructed field of views was just annoying enough to just want to go the next step. But if I had to do it again, I would build just a straight roll off observatory. My previous observatory was in fact just a traditional roof design with the whole roof rolling off onto tracks, kind of what Jeff is building right now. So Jeff, you're duplicating one of the designs from MAS.
Similar. I ended up buying plans from SkyShed.
Oh, sure. Yep, that's what I did. Yep.
And I designed everything, but I was interested in how their interface at the roof line was designed, and after Googling thousands and thousands of images trying to figure it out from other people's pictures, I just paid the $60 and bought their plans.
Right.
And anyway, so I drew that up now in SketchUp, and I have it designed out in CAD, and I think I have it, my design completed. I'm gonna use the garage door rails,
right,
rather than the V-notch cast wheels that you may have seen, which are pretty good, or just flat out cast rollers, which is what all the MAS club observatories use. So there's some variation there, and then I'm obviously tweaking it for my size observatory that I want. So it'll be a little while. I hired a concrete guy because I don't have no interest in pouring the concrete slab, and so I hired that part done. And right now, tentatively, he says I'm in early June, so I got a little time to wait for that. In the meantime, I can buy materials, and I've got some other tasks that I got to get done anyway. So, so it's it takes a while to do projects like this.
Yeah, I wish it, but it's been too long. It was like 12 years ago. I'm not sure where because I have moved since my last roll-off observatory was in Middleton, Wisconsin. So have no idea, but I did the exact same thing, Jeff, as I just bought the plans from SkyPod. And I tell you, the one nice thing that you'll see with the garage rails and the garage wheels, they are within a channel such that there's restraint of the wheels within that channel, so the roof isn't going to blow off on you.
Right.
Yeah, so
There's pros and cons to each. I think the trade-off, like, well, you even mentioned, I thought, right? You've even had some issues with your V-notch wheels and ice in the winter, right?
yeah, so what I ended up doing is putting in heat rods into I bought the larger V tracks,
Yeah.
so that I could actually put heat rods down them. So no, I've got a heating system now, and the snow and ice just melts right off the rails.
So that is a trade-off. I mean, I was talking with
Yep.
Scott Jameson, who also has built several observatories
Mhm.
in his life, and his current one has garage door rails, and he's done those. He has mentioned that, you got to remember those garage door rails have, is like a J or C, a letter C, right?
A letter C. Yep.
And the ones outside the observatory are always exposed, so that's a
Yep.
big trough to collect snow and ice.
Yep.
So he did warn me about that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's just a nuisance and not a huge issue. I don't know if drain holes are going to really matter with that, but we'll see whether that becomes an issue or not. That's the only thing the downside to those things that I can see. Otherwise, everything you've mentioned, like, it's kind of a built-in hold down, and
Right.
it seems to roll very, very good.
Oh yeah, it was very, very easy to roll, because you've got so many wheels going distributing all the weight. So and it was real easy to automate, as well.
So one of my neighbors built a small roll-off roof and has 2 telescopes in it. And I think it was, just the angle iron and the V wheels. He had a call from one of his neighbors, because he was back up in Canada. Fortunately, the telescopes were also in the house. Wind had come up and took his roof, and just like Wizard of Oz, took this. So, especially as Steve mentioned earlier, we have some fairly fierce winds here, and Wisconsin, you guys, we can all have winds. So, thinking about how that is dealt with. So, we've talked about roll-off roofs. As Dennis mentioned, I have one. I think it was built by Backyard Observatory a few years ago. And when I came down here, a year and a half ago, it was very easy to deploy my telescope, get it set up on a pier, get it going. This past year, I've been trying to get the domed observatory, which was on site, up and running. And that's a lot more, at least for me, complex, because that slit has to align with your telescope, and it's a different bunch of software, and you have to have the various software. For me, it's the SkyX and APCC, all talking with the dome software in order for it to align. And my slit is like 30 degrees. And the other night, I really got a chance to finally do some imaging with it. So I stayed out there, had a cot in the observatory in the warm room. I didn't get much sleep because I didn't quite have the tolerance set. So like every 7 or 8 minutes, the dome would move a little bit, then it'd move back. It would like move, say, 6 degrees and then move back 3 degrees. And it kept doing that. And it would preceded by a beeping sound like a truck backing up to warn you that the dome was going to turn. So so the following that, I figured out how to use remote desktop and control it from the house. It was a lot quieter and more peaceful.
Right.
The dome I have is manufactured by Ash Dome down in Illinois. Like I said, my roll-off is Backyard Observatory. They also have plans that you can purchase, and there's books you can purchase. So for people considering roll-off roofs, those sorts of things, you know, from what Steve has with a shed that rolls back, that can be pulled back, to Dennis's modified dome that has a roll-off roof, to what's at the Mass Observatory site, and what others are planning. There's a lot of options, and Jeff, I hope you have good documentation as you go along, and then perhaps in next year you can have a presentation for us on the trials and tribulations of building a roll-off roof on your own your own property.
Well, this is my second one. So the Thomas and Agnes and myself built F-Scope's roll-off roof. So I practiced there. I always practice on somebody else's money, and now I'm doing it for real for myself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
In fact, one thing I was going to bring up, Thomas and Agnes, I don't mean to put you on the spot. We talked about observatories. We've talked about, rolling out our rig. One of the setups that they have is a remote setup, very compact, backpackish. I don't know what is the model, the Star Tracker that you have, Thomas? I forget what it's called.
I forget either. What name?
I don't remember either.
Yeah, nevertheless, I really like your setup, because he's taking the time to, have everything in a very concise box that you can just carry, and everything you need is in there.
Oh, Fornax light track, Star Trek, light track 2. And it's
Go ahead, Tom. You take that out to dark, like to state parks and things like that.
yes,
Yeah.
well, same thing. Pole master for alignment. And this is unusual tracker. This is not. It doesn't have gears. It has a traction drive, and only can move, about 2 hours in one direction, and has to be reset. So that's a sometimes annoying limitation, but it really precise. On the other hand, doesn't need guiding.
And
Do you have any pictures of your setup?
Yeah, I think I do, but I need to find it.
Or you can share on the Google group if you can't find them, or on the Slack group.
Right.
I just like it because it's super lightweight. I think even Arun has one or had one, because he liked it so much. It's really good, and I think you're using Thomas, right? The 2600 MC.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's still using an Astro cooled camera with a DSLR lens, I think.
Right.
And it's just a neat setup. It's really compact. So it's kind of the other end of the spectrum, right? From a permanent observatory or taking your giant setup out to a remote dark site. You don't have to do that. You can get really
Well,
decent quality with it.
Still not a backpack thing, so it's
No.
when you have everything, it's
no,
Well,
I-
out of the back of your car, though. I mean, right?
it's a small,
I
fits
think
so it's small.
I think it's not much different from your setup. It's just looks smaller.
I'll let you set up my scope next time.
smaller that, but it is not that small. If you have to carry it, it's not that small.
Well, it's got pretty much the same complexity. It's just not computerized. I mean, not moved by a computer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So any other questions, comments, ideas about observing sites and locations?
I just found for some of the newcomers, I just found a current picture of my setup here, and so just let me quickly share this. Share. So what is going on here?
We can see the picture.
Oh, you can. Oh,
Yep.
okay. All right.
Yep.
Oh, cool. All right. So yeah. So this half of the dome folds into the back half. But like a tricycle, that second half rolls completely off. Now I can use it just where just the front half. So if I'm imaging something in the south or southeast or southwest, I don't have to roll the dome completely back. I can use it as a nice windshield if the wind is coming out of the north or northwest or northeast. So but then I have the option to just roll it completely off, and then I've got unlimited visibility in all directions. And I've installed a weather station back here as well. So actually, it should actually open up here in about another 45 minutes. I think it's scheduled to open up. I don't know. I'm not in control anymore, so it's completely has a mind of its own at this point. I just tell it what object I want to do, and it'll open up and go to that object, and I'll see all of the results the next morning.
You raise a good point, something which again I think a previous program had discussed, some of the instrumentation and so forth, but having a weather station for various reasons, especially automation, but just knowing what the conditions are. If you're sitting inside and you either want, message or an alarm sent, or if it's automated with Voyager, perhaps, that it closes down and sees an unsafe condition.
Oh yeah, no, this weather station is fully integrated into Voyager, and in Voyager I set up all of the conditions, certain wind speeds, any moisture closes the dome, and then and then it goes into a suspension mode. So if there's cloud cover, it'll suspend acquisition, and then it'll resume once, once things clear up. But yeah, no, the weather station is really critical, and it also has a wind sensor as well. So once I set the threshold pretty, once winds get over 10, 12 miles an hour, it just shuts down.
Yeah, I have that same wind sensor so that it can shut
Yeah,
my roll-off roof.
yeah. So I think that's just absolutely critical to have that peace of mind when you go to bed.
Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up the observatory discussion, and we have a couple of other topics. We got a little time that we can get to. So
Mhm.
I'll stop the recording.